Welcome back, Keepers of the Flame. Okay, so I said probably about, I don't know how long ago it was, that I was going to do a movie review. It was a hot minute ago. And there was a lot of processing to do with it. The movie is called She Said, and it's 2 hours and 8 minutes long. And it stars Carey Mulligan. She's the same lady who played the lead in Promising Young Woman. I don't know if you saw that. Worth the view. It was actually based on a book, which I found out while I was researching the movie. And I was like, oh, crap. But for those of you who don't know, it is based off of the Harvey Weinstein saga. Meow. I know, it's a sweet kitten. So it's a long movie, but it's an interesting saga and story as to what had to happen in order for that particular person to get some justice. And it was a lot. So I'm just going to give you my experience real quick. There was a group of elderly folk. When I say elderly, I mean they look like maybe they were in their 70s and 80s. But, I mean, well functioning, but much older than I myself. And I was really kind of like, wow, okay. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they had some inclining and they wanted to see how it worked out. So, sat next to him, and this older gentleman, he was so. There was a lot of moments in the movie where you could laugh. There were a lot of moments in the movie where you could cry. And at the end of the movie, he looked over at us and he said, I really hope they string him up by his ball sack. I was like, the little old man is really pissed off. So it was a really good film. Now, I will say that I was a little concerned at the beginning that they were going to make it political. But I think they were just I hope they were being honest about what they were pointing out in the beginning of the film. I hope they were. I don't necessarily doubt it, but it'd be nice to have a backup story on that. Like, could somebody write a book about that, please? So, and it was surprisingly packed. Now, I'm not a movie connoisseur by any means, but I've been to, I don't know, 5 or 6 movies in the last year, I want to say. And it's usually us and a few other people. Was not expecting the turnout. The movie theater was quite packed. And I was like, okay, we're paying attention. So that was a nice thing. Now, granted, this was opening weekend, and I think it opened on Friday, and we went on Sunday. So there's that aspect of it. Okay, so let's get into the guts of it. I think the most unfortunate part of the movie was I wasn't shocked at all about the content, really. I was shocked more about the procedures, about the things in place that did not protect anyone. There were no safety nets for these people. And when I say people, this isn't a feminist movie. They had a lot of beautiful, amazing, terrific, strong male characters in this movie, backing them up. So I got no feminazi vibes from this at all. And which was so refreshing, because I went in prepared for that. I'm like, I'm going to have to vet this like nobody's freaking business. You know, when you go into a situation and you just kind of know, like, you're like, this is stereotypical. I'm just going to have my dukes up and let in what I need to let in and keep out the rest. And I think, you know, that's a healthy way to go at things, at least from my perspective. So I was completely unguarded after about halfway through, because it wasn't a man bashing thing. It was this human is doing this really horrible thing repeatedly to other humans. And that is such an important thing, because we need to stop making this a female thing. I know they make up 80%, but it's just like saying, you know, the Jews are the one who, you know, caused the Holocaust. They didn't cause the Holocaust. Some nut job decided he was going to make war. And, you know, out of the 11 million people he decided to vet off the planet, 5 million of them were Jews. This is correct. But they don't get to take the cake. They don't get to take the cake. They all get freaking cake. The Catholics, the Christians, the Gypsies, the whatevers. I'm sure had he reached a certain point, you know, a particular other religious group would have been on that friggin' rubbish board too. So let's just call it for what it is. Yes, 20% versus 80%. If those numbers are even accurate, men can still be victims of sexual violence. Disclosure. Trigger warning. This movie is not friendly. I thought I was going to be okay afterward. I thought I was going to be like, oh, I'll go home and do a movie review. I actually wasn't okay after. I had to process some stuff. And it brought up a lot of things for me personally. So I was like, I can't make a video until I sit down with this stuff and like work through it. Which to me, for me personally, is a really, really good thing. If this is still something that's really bothering you and you just can't deal with it right now because you've got too much on your plate, I totally understand that. I totally get it. There's no shame in that at all. There's no shame in self-care and self-preservation. I'll see you in another video. Okay? Don't worry about that. But for those of you who stuck around, this is a whole new suitcase of trauma, because it's now the hierarchy trauma. It's now the systematic clusterfuck that's in place right now. So one right after another, these two investigative reporters, and by the way, New York Times, you do not get off the hook because you have two phenomenal reporters on your team. Just saying. So these two reporters are going through all of these different venues and avenues trying to figure out what's really happening with these women who are making claims against Harvey Weinstein. There's women who can't talk. There's women who have tried to talk and been shut down. It's a whole mess of just trying to get to some facts, trying to get to the truth, where the reports were made, where the reports went. How come we can't get to the reports? Well, what did you do with them? Well, why did you do that? And that was the most upsetting thing to me. I have first-hand knowledge of that, but I did not realize that it's pretty much all across the board, which brought up two things. One, I felt a little less alone, and B, I had the natural instinct to just get enraged over it. I was like, there are specific institutions that they point out in this movie, or call out, or not really, indirectly. They're on the phone. The reporter's on the phone with this woman who is working at a company who gets paid to report on if companies are safe for people to work at. That's the sole purpose of the company existing. And they couldn't tell her about any of the claims that were made. Because this dude bought him off. Somebody bought him off. Somebody paid a lot of money to shut them up and suppress it. Same with the filings that were at the police department. They get rid of them after 3 years. And the reporter's like, what? Why do you do that? The systematic dismissal, the systematic breakdown. All of these organizations that are supposed to be working and in place to halt this thing are collecting money for no damn good reason, basically. Basically, all of these people, whether they're taxpayer or whether private, whatever it is, they're collecting money to not do their jobs. See, I'm still hot about it. I'm still hot. Collecting money to not do their jobs. And that's what I found the most enraging. Because the shock of our culture has worn off. I'm numb to it. I'm just numb. I'm like, yep. And and it's sick. It's sad. It's disgusting. And maybe I've been down too many rabbit holes. I don't know. But I have been desensitized to it. So the part that really just prickled me is the fact that there are far too many people who get paid to not do their job. Who get paid to add to people's trauma and add to people's abuse and support it by simply not talking about it. The staggering amount of apathy, I believe would be the correct phrase. The staggering amount of apathy is enraging. And that's what stuck out to me the most in this movie. But the thing that I really liked the most about it was real life. These are real people. Or at least they made it feel like that. They went through these women's lives and brought in the aspect of being human. Not these holier than thou, whatever, like crusaders without a personal life and without repercussions and without having this affect their lives. And I think that's really important because so many times, like, Hollywood is like just a lot of disconnected. Really disconnected. And we begin to lose faith in it. And we begin to wonder, what are you making art for? Because we don't get it. So, it was refreshing. And it was, to a certain extent, uplifting to a certain extent. I mean, I still left with a blazing bumhole, if you will, because I was like, I can't believe this. This is like, how do we just let this slide? Why are we screaming at the leaders? Why can't we hold these institutions accountable? Where's the laws? You know what the answer was? There isn't any. Why? What happened? all these women with these gag orders and whatnot now can't testify because they've signed a document saying that they promised they wouldn't say anything and they took money for it. There's no... And then, you know, you've got some things also in the judicial system right now that's probably going to fall through. So this movie's going to leave you with way more questions than it does answers. But it does need to be highlighted. It does need to be talked about. It does need to come to light. It really, really does. And it, again, this is a human issue. It's not just a woman's issue. It's a human issue. We cannot leave our brothers out in the cold. We can't do it. You know what it's like living with this. Then why would you leave somebody else like that? That's not nice. That's not... So, no, we don't get to hate all people with that particular gender. We just don't get to do that. I know it's easier than having to sit with it. I get that, but I'm not judging you for that. But I think that if we come together, and they did a good job of demonstrating that in this movie, is coming together, what you can do when you get together with a group of people that are driven to make a difference. I think that they did do like a screenshot, spoiler alert, where they were all rereading the article before they posted it. Spoiler alert, they posted an article. And there were 6 people, 3 men and 3 women. And they held on to a point, the shot, I will say, to a point where you're like, okay, yeah. So they were just waiting for the audience to get it. 3 men, 3 women. This is not a feminine thing. This is a human thing. Which was probably well needed. I do recommend that you see it, if nothing else, to point out to Hollywood that, yeah, we would like to see more truth come out rather than all this fictional BS that you got going. And this also highlights how much respect and safety journalists need to have in the legal system as well. These people are putting their lives on the line. These people are going out there and doing the really difficult work. And we really need to honor those people more than we do. Whether we agree with what they're putting out or not, I don't think it matters. As long as they have proof to back it up and they have truth behind them and whatever else, I think we support everybody who speaks for the truth, period, the end. And I can't give enough gratitude and respect to those people. Because if it weren't for those people, we wouldn't know how to move forward. We wouldn't have a gauge. We wouldn't have anything to move forward on except for a pack of lies. Do you know how terrifying that is? I mean, talk about a country that shall not be named. You know, the oppression that happens in other countries. That's huge. That's huge. And so we really do need to honor and respect reporters and journalists who are going out there to uncover the injustices, not to uncover people's private parts or, make celebrities the main topic of whatever. We'd probably be a little better off if we paid less attention to that and more attention to people that need to be held accountable for. understanding that what we focus on, I get it, perpetuates itself. But at the same time, how are we going to move forward in this society if we don't know what the truth is, if we don't know what's happening, right? So kudos to the journalists. So what's our duty of care here? Where there's a problem, there's always a solution, right? What's our duty of care? If you see something, say something. So if it were me, I would walk up to the person who might have just come out of somebody's office or be disarrayed or whatever at the place I work at and say, hey, can I help you? Do you need some help? What do you need? That's just me. That's who I am. I know. But that's not, I know, and I usually keep to myself. But the thing is if we don't start being more human about this, it's going to get worse. It's going to get more out of control. So we need to start nipping it in the bud and start being there for people and supporting the people. You know, I worked at a place that one girl was like, look, this just happened to me. I need to take it to management. Can you come with me? And I said, absolutely. So if we can do that for people, if we can say, hey, yep, I'll sit with you. And that's all I did. I didn't really say anything. I just sat with her. And I was just there for support because that's what she needed. So we don't need to go all over the place. We need to find them a safe haven. We need to understand that their wishes do need to be taken into account. Sometimes they're not ready for this. Sometimes they're not ready for that. You can state the ramifications for this choice, that choice, and the other choice, but ultimately the choice is theirs. That is one thing that we do need to understand. You might think that they need to go to the police or get checked out at a medical facility. But I've been in that secondhand circumstance myself, and that can get a little hairy too. So my best recommendation is that you do go to the police first, because they will have the authority to get you into the medical facility to be checked out. If you just walk into a facility, they're probably, odds are they're not going to be able to help you. You have to go to particular places, yada, yada, yada. Because there's a particular protocol for that, yada, yada, yada. So your best option is to go to the police first. But you need to respect their wishes, because sometimes they're not ready, they're not willing. Sorry. Lilith is trying to claw her way upstairs. Do you need a cuddle? Okay. So, handling it with care, handling it with delicacy, and understanding that you can't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do, because they just got out of a situation where they were forced to do something they didn't want to do. So, remembering to listen first. So, with respect and compassion, right? Don't try to take the out of it and try to say, okay, I hear you, I understand you, it's gonna be okay. Let me know what you need, okay? So teachers, inform your students. Yep, we gotta talk about this, kids. We gotta talk about it. I don't want my kid knowing about that stuff. Well, then you're exposing your kid to it. So it's better to present the child with an option to set up some boundaries and tell whatever jerkface is in front of them that's trying to violate anything to go F themselves. In a very disrespectful way if necessary. Okay, so this respecting everybody's thing, If somebody's violating you, if somebody's violating anybody, you teach your kids to speak up and say, abso-fucking-lutely not. I know. It makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? You know what's really uncomfortable? Sitting with a young one who's been through it, who's had to suffer at the hands of a jerk face. So either suffer with it first, because I think the children are worth a little bit more than just an uncomfortable feeling sensation that you might get, rather than having to go through a lifetime of healing and therapy because they were not prepared to stand up for themselves in a horrific situation. Parents, I could give parents the same little teaching. So, again, putting your comfort aside, because it's not going to help. It's not going to help. If you're like, I don't want to be uncomfortable with my kid. It's better you be uncomfortable with your kid when they're young and teach them how to fight, scratch, claw, scream, kick, whatever it is, their way out of that situation, no matter who it is, and not have to sit with them in a police station or in a medical facility or a therapy appointment or, wherever it may be, in the principal's office, whatever it might be. It's better that you get over your awkwardness and your uncomfortableness and protect them first. Think of them first, not you, if that makes sense. Okay. So, then comes the lawmakers. Oh, we've got a long way to go, kids. We've got a long way to go. And it's an uphill battle. I just watched some, I don't want to call it a documentary, but it was like that Illuminati lady. She's like the Dorito of the internet or whatever, YouTube. And she was talking about the Paris Hilton documentary about how she went to that Provo place for abused kids or misbehaving kids or whatever the heck it was. And they got away with so many abuses because there was no checks and balances. The people that were supposed to be keeping them in check, again, got paid to do their job that they weren't doing. So that's a slippery slope, right? You're told by your boss one thing, but then the law says another. So you got to obey the law, right? So we need to change the law. Because when you're in that predicament where you're supposed to be overseeing people who are vulnerable, who are susceptible to horrible treatment, they need the most protection. 83% of disabled people, not just children, people in general, 83% abused. That's just SA. That had nothing to do with physical, emotional, mental, psychological, nothing. Just SA and I. Kitten, what are you doing? I don't think that's a good idea. So that needs to change on a law. Oh God, the law. Okay. It's really bad. So I highly recommend you go see it. Just to support, not only are you supporting the people who are victims of this particular thing, but you're also showing support for the victims who are not speaking out because they're scared or whatever else. You're also showing support for them. And that's why I spent money and went to this movie. So the last true vote we have is with the dollar, by the way. That's just my humble opinion. So, another good series to investigate about this is an HBO series called I Am Evidence. Now, I think they just lowered their prices for HBO on the go or Max or whatever the heck it is. So it's worth a few months of whatever that you get. Westworld and Game of Thrones, I think, is on there, and it's totally worth it. Totally worth it for a couple months. So, I Am Evidence, the lead actress in Law and Order SVU. I know her name on the series, can't remember her name for the life of me in real life. But she got inundated with so many letters and emails from people explaining that like they had been the victim of a rape as well. And so she teamed up with HBO and made this series, and that'll blow your mind too. So I'm gonna just to give you a baseline of some statistics, because who doesn't love numbers, right? Okay, so 47% of women in Finland reported physical or SA in the year. This is the year. I had the year somewhere. I think it was the year 2019. For some odd reason, the stats for pretty much everything kind of like after 2019, which I thought was peculiar. So, and then 52% of women in Denmark reported physical and SA. Zimbabwe, and this is kind of like in order, so I'm going from like lowest to highest in like 10 or 11 countries. Zimbabwe, children between 5 and 16 are targeted the most. 1,524 cases in the first 3 months of the year in 2019. Australia, 1 in 6 women. And 70% of the victims are known. So 70% of essays reported in Canada or in Australia know their victims. They're not strangers. So Canada has 460,000 essays every year. 80% were women. 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys are likely to be sexually abused before the age of 16. India, 93% of women